The storm has now arrived. Well, today is just a typical autumnal day. The wind is blowing at around 20 miles per hour estimation wise, and it's starting to rain as well. But I don't know whether some of you know, particularly those who are in the UK, but as we know, this weekend, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and possibly into Monday as well, the parts of the UK, particularly southern UK, may be experiencing an Indian summer. Yes, I was like, we don't usually get Indian summers. What is an Indian summer? Well, as we know, I know a little bit about Indian summer. It's basically, an Indian summer is characterised, by very warm southerly winds coming in directly from parts of the Atlantic Pacific Ocean, drawn in by the jet stream. This Indian summer usually occurs around October or November time. It's just an old saying. This used to happen like several years ago. I'm not sure where the word term Indian exactly comes from, but what I do know is that's what they referred to as Indian summer. I think it was around 1600s they started originally made from that. And the last time the UK was an Indian summer, well actually, there has been a few glimpses of recent Indian summer spells for the past previous years, but the 2011 was the most notable one, where we had that heatwave at the beginning of October, and that was classified as an Indian summer. So, we're going through facts about what is the Indian summer and what could this year's Indian summer may potentially take hold in the UK. I'm going inside. Just look at the wind. It's much too windy to discuss about this today. That's autumn. So, what is exactly an Indian summer? This was mainly taken in 2011, I'm going to read just next, but autumn heat waves are often referred to as Indian summers. But what does the term actually mean? Meteorologist Philip Eden explained that something strange has been happening to the way we perceive our climate over recent years. Nowadays, when we get a bout of unusual weather, we ask what has gone wrong. So there seems to be a growing disconnection between Brits and their very own climate. But most spells of unusual weather are simply that unusual. They have happened before and they will happen again. One or two date records have been broken during the spell, but date records are relatively easy to break. Taking a rather broader view, highest of 27 to 29 degrees Celsius, Fahrenheit terms 8 to 84.2. have happened before in late September. So the mercury has soared to around 30 degrees Celsius or just above on several occasions during the last week of the month, which was around September. And then the highest October temperature ever recorded in the UK was 29.4 degrees Celsius in the small market town of March, Cambridgeshire. So obviously on the first day of the month in 1985. Thus was coined meteorologists' favourite quiz season. When was the October temperature record set in March? Autumn heat waves, such as this, are frequently dubbed Indian summers. But in the last few years, the term seems to become slightly less popular as a consequence of a political correctness in the US. So somehow, Native American summers doesn't have quite the same ring to it, does it? So, late 19th century, Boston lexicographer named Albert Matthews made an exhaustive search of early American literature in an attempt to discover who coined the expression. The first reference he found dated from 1778, but from the context it was clearly already in widespread use. So the North American Indians, Native Americans, who both lived on the eastern seaboard, used to depend on extended periods of fine, quiet, sunny weather at this time of the year to complete their harvest and to put together stores of food to see them through the long cold winter. The northeastern US is well known for a combination of high temperatures and high humidity levels during the summer, often starting in June and not subsiding until September. The early settlers quickly became aware of the contrast between the liberating heat of high summer and the more comfortable conditions which prevailed during the autumn. So during this time, long periods of hard work, could be tackled without risk of heat stroke. They also noticed that particularly every autumn produced at least one such spell. Many had even two or three. So some claim that an Indian summer cannot come until the first damaging frost of autumn or after a severely cold episode, sometimes known as a squall winter. So in UK, weather observers knew of the American usage from the mid-19th century onwards, but from the expression did not gain wide currency until the 1950s. Famous 20th century climatologists such as Ernest Billum, Gordon Manley, and Hubert Lamb did not use it in their extensive writings except when referring to the American phenomenon. Once established, though, it quickly became linked to those spells of unseasonably warm weather which occur from time to time during the autumn. The latest edition of the Meteorological Glossary defines it as a warm, calm spell of weather occurring in autumn, especially in October and November, so it is most commonly used in those 2 months, but ideas such as spells starting in late September is not necessarily precluded. Before the middle of the last century, such a spell of fine weather would be linked to ancient weather lore and the church calendar. So in mid-October, for instance, it would have been called St. Luke's Little Summer, as the feast day of St. Luke falls on the 18th of October, while in mid-November it would be St. Martin's Summer, as St. Martin's feast day is the 11th of November. Shakespeare also used the expression All Halloween Summer in Henry IV's Part 1 of a period of warm sunshine as October gives way to November. A more generic but now sadly politically incorrect idiom is Old Wife's Summer. All these expressions may still be heard in various parts of Britain, but chiefly in remote rural areas, though they are naturally much less common than they were 60 or 70 years ago. The idea there are particular times of the autumn in Britain when these warm spells might recur in a factional one. Detailed statistical analyses do not suggest that any one week is more favoured than any other, and in a few years autumn brings relentlessly disturbed weather with a progressive drop in temperature, and there is nothing remotely Indian summer-like at all. The origin of all these sayings has perhaps more to do with keeping people's spirits up during a headlong rush into winter. Let's go to more meaning. It's important that you may want to learn about the term of Indian summer. So an unseasonably warm, dry and calm weather usually followed a period of cold weather or frost in the late autumn or in the southern hemisphere, where the term is less common than the late spring. So the origin. So the origin of other Indian phrases like Indian giver Indian sign are well known as referring to North American Indians, who prefer to be called Native Americans or in Canada First Nations. The term Indian summer has reached England in the 19th century during the heyday of the British Raj in India. This led to the mistaken belief that the term referred to the Indians of the continent. In fact, the Indians in question were the Native Americans, and the term began used in the late 18th century. Indian summer is first recorded in letters from an American farmer, a 1778 work by the French-American soldier turned farmer J. H. St. John de Quevigar, aka Michel Guillemot Jean de Quevigar. I don't know how to say his name. Then a severe frost succeeds, which prepares to receive the farmer's coat of snow, which is soon to follow, though it is often preceded by a short interval of smoke and mildness called the Indian summer. There are many references to the term in American literature in the following 100 years or so. In the 1830s, Indian summer began to be used figuratively to refer to any late following a period of decline. It was well enough established as a phrase by 1834 for John Greenleaf Whittier to use the term that way when in his poem Memories he wrote of the Indian Summer of the Heart. Thomas de Quincey, published in Bentley's work of Thomas de Quincey, 1855, wrote, An Indian summer crept stealthily over his closing days. So in History of the Guardian Age of 1867, Oliver Wendell Holmes mentions an Indian summer of senior widowhood. The English already had names for the phenomenon, St. Luke's summer, St. Martin's summer, or Halloween summer, but these have now all but disappeared, and like the rest of the world, the term Indian summer has been used in the UK for at least a century. As a climatic event, it is known throughout the world and is technically called a weather singularity, that is a climatic event that recurs around the same time of the year. The frequency, depth and longevity weather pattern is clearly dependent on geography. It is most frequently associated with the eastern and central states of the USA, which have a suitable climate to generate the weather pattern, but that is a wide variation of temperature and wind strength from summer to winter. Many of those states are almost famous for their areas of hardwood forest, which show up well during Indian summers when the leaves have already begun to turn and the sun is shining. So why Indian? That's the main thing. Well, no one knows, but as in commonplace where no one knows, many people have guessed. Here are a few of the more commonly repeated guesses. When European settlers first came across a phenomenon in America, it became known as the Indian Summer. The haziness of the Indian summer weather was caused by prairie fires deliberately set by Native American tribes. It was the period when First Nations Native American peoples harvested their crops. The phenomenon was more common in what were their North American Indian territories. It relates to the marine shipping trade in the Indian Ocean. This is highly dubious as it is entirely remote from the early US situations. It originated from raids on European settlements by Indian war parties which usually ended in autumn. In a parallel with other Indian terms, it implied a belief in Indian falsity and untrustworthiness that an Indian summer was an crass copy of the real thing. So the incidence of Indian summers have increased significantly over the past decade or so. In the UK at least, I can't speak for other countries, as one symptom of the unstable weather caused by global warming. So Native Americans espoused and lived a life of harmony with nature that has now been put forward by supporters of deep green philosophy and the Gaia theory as a solution to the world's climate problems. It is ironic and sad they should have given their name to something that has now become associated with global warming. So there you go. That's what you know a bit more about an Indian summer. And finally, this week's Indian summer, this weekend's Indian summers are perhaps. So in the next couple of days, we're back to shorts and t-shirt weather again. And yes, we may even get low 20s in our region. So the Indian summer, as we know, the UK is set for a scorcher weekend as tropical hurricane pushes warm weather here. So thank the hurricane for it. So the remains of a tropical hurricane was heading for thermometers soaring this weekend after an unseasonably balmy few days. Well, early in the week it was mild as well. Hurricane Nate, currently battling the US with 85 miles per hour winds, is about to make a U-turn and head towards Britain. Don't panic. Listen carefully. The storm will fizzle out its journey across the Atlantic, arriving to northern Europe as a mass of warm air. So as we know, temperatures could touch 21 degrees Celsius, and to be honest, I wouldn't even be surprised if we may even get 23 degrees in south of England. Mid to high teens elsewhere, and again in our region 20 Celsius is possible, maybe even 21. So we'll feel an unusually warm week with thermometers widely expected to hover around 8 degrees Celsius above normal for October. Britain should make the most of warm, with the eventual change in the weather threatening a shock to the system. This was updated on Monday, so at the moment, after when we have this Indian summer spell, temperatures will still hover just above average. The nationwide split will bring warm, dry conditions to the south over the coming days, while the north faces an unsettled picture. So brightest conditions always will be in the south and southeast, with north seeing more wave drizzle, some coastal gales, and some thunder and hail. So we know next weekend we expect to see remnants of ex-Hurricane Nate reach the UK, and this will push temperatures up further. Through the week, we're looking highs of around 13 and 14 degrees in the north and 17 to 18 further south. These temperatures are, as we know, above average for time of year, so will come as a bit of a shock to the system, and eventually revert to the north with more northerly airflow. So Hurricane Nate, currently hammering the US states, is forecast to sweep northwards over the coming days. So the Category 1 storm is moving around 20 miles per hour towards the northeast coast of America with circling winds of 85 miles per hour. So I'll pass over the Arctic, losing much of its energy before reaching the UK next weekend. So low 20s in our region. High humidity and clear conditions could make it feel close to 24 degrees in parts, according to some outlooks. And it said accurate forecaster Christy, I don't know how you pronounce your surname, Pediocolaxi warned people living in the north to brace for a wet and windy week. However, those further south will be able to leave their bodies home while largely escaping the deluge, she added. Northern United Kingdom will face the brunt of what will become an unsettled week, with frequent bouts of rain and gusty winds. The wettest and windiest conditions accompanying each front are expected to focus primarily on northern UK and coastal Wales, creating the greatest disruptions to travel and outdoor plans. So the rest of Wales and the south of England should face less impacts, as rainfall will generally be limited to just odd showers. Commuters in London can instead leave bodies and wellies home. A dry and seasonable Monday will prevail with highs of 17 Celsius. So the average mean temperatures for October is 9.49 degrees Celsius, with 12.79 the average maximum. So there you go. All set for the end of summer weekend? I hope you are. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please, guys, give it a like, comment, and subscribe for more content, and I'll update you on the Indian summer conditions potentially affecting the East Midlands and south of England. So that's all I got to get to you. Alright, thanks for watching a pretty long video. Like, comment, and subscribe. And hopefully this video will get near 100 views. The last few have, so let's hope this one will. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe. The storm will be now out.